my choice was Spiral Staircase.
Was that yours?
Yeah, I was into like the trippy, hippie thing when I was 15.
And Dirk Lancis was Chunk O' Funk.
Yeah. And then Mike looked into Thesaurus, and he's all, Incubus, look, right there, that should be our name. We're all,
While Incubus delve further and further into the emotional and musical complexities of gutsy, intelligent metal, with their winning brand of sensitive, angular fury, it's their attention to detail and outstanding ability to mesh together disparate styles and strands that makes them so unique. Their recorded output explores the whole spectrum of moody, punchy rock and roll, reflecting an innate understanding of what makes hips move and souls sigh, as well as keeping the musical masturbation to a minimum. Some songs throb with power, virility and energy. Some sound up close and personal, and others spread their wings and head off into the off-kilter territory labelled strange but lovely. Though this remarkable group have been plugging away at their thing for some 10 years now, they made their big crossover breakthrough with 1999's Make Yourself album, a record which shifted in excess of 2 million copies. Since then, Incubus's singles and promo videos have become staples of radio and television networks, and their renowned website is more popular than any other artist signed to their parent company Sony, save for Jennifer Lopez. The hard, grueling years on the road might have taken their toll on lesser acts, but in Incubus's case, their rock apprenticeship has served to stiffen their resolve and make them the close, tight-knit, independent force that they now are. In these over-corporate, musically homogenous times, Incubus have demonstrated that it is perfectly possible to deliver uplifting, innovative, insightful, imaginative and passionate music which refuses to follow convention and treads a curious path all of its own. Of late, there's been some frankly dull music created by an ever-swelling rank of long-haired men with angst levels cranked up to 1. But thankfully, Incubus stand apart from the pack, eschewing the increasingly over-familiar pallor and whinging for a palette of golden glowing sounds and unswerving melancholy songwriterly craft. Their records bristle with excitement, but never forget to draw the listener in with a range of tumultuous peaks and incandescent lows, secure in the knowledge that great art can be sprawling as well as hushed and intimate. Whereas cartoon metal acts such as Slipknot, Rammstein and Cradle of Filth seem to give the impression that they're more interested in lame shock tactics than the sounds they make, Incubus remain committed to artistic purity. At a time when most of popular music's ambitions are inch high, their records ooze the desperate desire to go somewhere utterly new. When their creative focus matches their zealous experimentation, and you get something as marvellous as aqueous transmission, you can only surrender and swoon. This is the noise of people feeling duty-bound to push the envelope and pulling off their designs with breathtaking panache and finesse. Most of the band's finest moments actually straddle the boundaries between planet-sized jiggery-pokery and cerebral tunesmithery, creating a headspace as far from the brainless riffing and regulation teen angst of most metal as is possible within the form. Their best recordings reject the self-inflation and peacock-esque narcissism of their peers, possessing a brutally compact design that bursts with vigour, ideas and compositional ability. There's always the sense of a taut pop dynamic which ensures against vast stretches of pomp and fluting vacuity. The music industry might have chosen to look the other way in recent years, its increasingly multinational veracity fed by a stream of anodyne new metalers. But Incubus have held firm in their visionary zeal, doggedly determined to pursue their muse and eschew showy flamboyance for jaw-dropping kinetic brilliance on vinyl. Lyrically, they underscore a distinct distancing from new metal, disregarding its woe is me, I was fucked up by my parents' split aesthetic for a more ambiguous, artful and calculated take on grown-up traumas and foibles. Musically, ringing guitars skid and crash into each other's airspace like cloudburst jewels, coming at moments within a whisker of annihilation. Eastern and orchestral influences are showcased without pretension or tokenism. Their introspective ballads are imbued with a brave, exposed sexiness, and in particular, the work of guitarist Mike Einziger is a pristine joy. veering between soul-bearing love songs, sensitive light-as-aloft anthems, atmospheric grooves and squalling bombast-free rockers. Incubus strive for music of grandiosity and stridency. Their albums are constructed as a unified whole, their songs linked by a common need for escape and redemption from the mental brick walls of existence. Incubus offer not one but several enigmas. Firstly, as a bunch, they're refreshingly free of salacious intrigue and contrived personas, a rarity in a world stuffed with idiots prancing around in masks, skirts and wigs and pretending to be fucked up when they're not. They are genuinely down-to-earth, nice, respectful guys without an obvious novelty trick or publicity tool. Their almost avant-garde, willfully obscure approach to making music is light years removed from even metal's skewed concept of commercialism. Yet, their records sell by the million. The delightfully well-adjusted frontman Brandon Boyd has achieved iconic status despite his self-confessed reticence and well-publicized close relationship with his beloved mother. Although overflowing with melody and tequila-drunk hooks, the music often requires multiple listens to even scratch its matte black surface. Hulking, churning riffs are too obvious for a group of musicians whose raison d'etre is to chuck away the rulebook and translate the left-field fringe of alternative music into metal's leaden lexicon. Flowery anthems like Stella provide initial points of access, but ultimately it's Incubus's borderline progressive, outlandish edge that proves most rewarding and satisfying. Inventive and intense, constructed from countless textures and layers, chock full of sun-dappled melodies of the most euphoric kind, their music should be enough to conquer even the stoniest of hearts. If you really want a brave, honest, exciting, demanding and bold alternative to the MTV attention span soundbites of nu metal, then look no further.
I met that guy in 4th grade, Jose. I met Michael, we met in 6th grade, right? We met this fine gentleman in 9th grade, and then we met Chris after high school.
Incubus's charismatic frontman and leader Brandon Boyd was raised in Calabasas, California, an affluent town near Malibu. His mother was a singer, artist and author, whilst his dad was a jobbing model and actor, so a career in entertainment was always on the cards for Brandon. However, nobody expected him to eventually pursue a musical career, let alone becoming the focal point and singer in a hard-rocking band, least of all Brandon himself. As a child, Brandon was always being chased by girls who found his pale blonde hair and big brown eyes an irresistible mix. Even his teachers wanted to touch his trademark locks. He inherited his good looks from his father, whose biggest gigs were the Salem cigarette commercials, a couple of Days of Our Lives episodes, and a pop video with Julio Iglesias and Diana Ross. The young Brandon possessed and exuded an irrepressible cutesy charisma, but lacked the gift of the gab when it came to interacting with the opposite sex. Initially, he didn't quite know how to deal with all the female attention he was getting. In the 3rd grade, for example, as his mother would pick him up from school, an older girl would jump on Brandon in the van and maul his face to pieces with cherry-flavoured lip gloss. Brandon's reaction was to push her off, burst into tears and sulk. Eventually he saw the light. In 4th grade, a 6th grade girl followed him home from school and got invited in to play with his toys. After some time in his bedroom, he walked into the kitchen to inform his mother that he'd been kissing her and that he'd enjoyed the experience. Though he gained confidence as he got older, Brandon retained his core shyness around women, and to this day claims to be painfully introverted and awkward in their company. This in spite of the fact that he was raised by a strong, assertive woman, grew up around girls and had many female friends, not forgetting his status as US rock's hottest pin-up. The middle child of 3 sons, Brandon was a mummy's boy from day one and retains a strong bond with his beloved ma Dolly Wiseman. As a baby, he knocked over a hot cup of coffee and scalded his armpit. his mother ignored an ER doctor's assurances and flew him to a burn center, where they learnt it was a severe injury that would require a skin graft from his thigh. Dolly's intuition paid off, as it did later in life when she laid her healing hands on him to cure his inner ear rebellion on the eve of a major tour. Dolly Wiseman, an expert on Mayan prophecies, an enthusiast of all things spiritual and holistic, would prove to be the major influence on Brandon's artistic awareness and flowering. She shaped his approach to music, culture, love, spirituality, and yoga, instilling in him a love of alternative ideas and books such as The Mists of Avalon. The young Brandon originally harbored dreams of becoming a professional cartoonist, a natural progression from his love of comics and cartoons and his art school course, which he attended for 2 years. However, it would be music that turned his head and provided him with a platform for harnessing his creative energies. Brandon had been friends with future Incubus drummer Jose Padillas since childhood, hanging out together and avoiding the brain-dead jocks. Both attended Calabasas High School, along with Incubus's axe wizard Mike Einziger and bassist Dirk Lance. When they were 15, Brandon and the West Coast punk-loving Jose began experimenting with music together. In its infancy, this music constituted nothing more than aimless screeching and cobbling together of whatever sounded nasty, pissed off and fiery. What it lacked in polish and sophistication, it made up for in raw urgency and honesty. Brandon and Jose were drifting closer and closer to each other through music. Both had grown up around music in the home, their tastes progressing fast. Fellow students familiar with Brandon as an unassuming classmate would have been forced to do a double take when witnessing his rock and roll stagecraft. He felt that his music was coming from the same impulse as his drawing, increasing his self-confidence and giving him the focus his life had hitherto lacked. His musical ambitions blossomed at around the same time as his parents split, described by him as the darkest period in his family's history. As he struggled to deal with the fallout of this, he found solace in hollering and bellowing out covers of Metallica classics. Over a period of time, Brandon developed his persona away from the shadows of obvious rock star models into something more enigmatic and pure, and in time would apply the same combination of inspiration, maturity, and calculation to the music. Meanwhile, guitarist Mike Einziger also turned to music as a therapeutic tool. At the age of 14, he was seriously injured in a car crash, which caused the death of one of his best friends. Shaken up by the experience, he became withdrawn and retreated to his bedroom, where he developed a considerable proficiency on guitar. His parents suggested that their son go to see a therapist or counselor because he was keeping his emotions bottled up. In reality, he was just dealing with the experience in his own way, the only way he knew how. This tragedy gave Mike the impetus to assess life and pour his energies into the guitar.
There was a definite influence from Faith No More.
Yes.
All of us in the band have been listening to that band since when we were, we were really young.
kids,
We
right.
were like 14 or something when
children,
it came out.
yeah.
They were an awesome band. They did some really groundbreaking things in their time, and it's kind of a bummer to hear that they broke up.
The original lineup of Incubus, Brandon, Jose, Mike and bassist Alex Kachunik, were formed in a garage in Calabasas in January 1991. The band were named not in honor of the 1980s thrash group of the same name, but after a mythological demon that has sex with sleeping women. They began recording scratchy demos in a studio in Santa Monica in the early 1990s, recruiting Dirk Lance to replace Kachunik on bass guitar. The group was so apprehensive before their debut gig at an LA club that Dolly Wiseman prescribed group meditation for them. She told them to lie down on the floor and then talked them through a visualization whereby they were swimming underwater and playing with dolphins. This had the effect of making them feel utterly relaxed and at one with the situation. They went out and played magnificently, as if they'd done it hundreds of times before. They began playing small clubs and friends' parties before graduating to all-age clubs throughout Southern California. They opened for numerous big hair bands at Hollywood gigs. The music of early Incubus was relatively simplistic, though energetic funk metal, influenced by the like of Jane's Addiction and Faith No More. It was an inspiring time to start a band, as those groups were demonstrating that a passionate, vital, creative music, unfettered by package tours and clothing sponsorships, could be successful and on its own terms. Initially, Incubus's music was quite crude yet spirited, but despite their apparent shortcomings, the songs conveyed a charm and enthusiasm that would stand a test of time. Moreover, Mike's style of playing was remarkably creative for somebody with so little experience. Rather than strum chords or build lumpy, predictable riffs, he would pick out arpeggios and throw in lots of suspended fourths. With the guitar such a dominant force in the band's armoury, the entire sound thus took on a more refined feel. As they built up a catalogue of original material and a loyal Californian following, Incubus knew it was time to secure a record deal. They sent their demo tapes to numerous labels, including majors, but to no avail. They simply weren't interested in what Incubus had to offer them, but the band were unruffled. They were having fun playing the music they liked. That it was instantly popular in the clubs proved its merits. Rather than worry about the people who wouldn't like them, they instead focused on those who did, and those who would bring their friends to the next gig. Record company indifference wasn't going to hamper the band, and they decided to put out an independent release, Fungus Among Us, in 1995. The 10-track album is a goofy, Primus-influenced affair, though not without its high points. As well as Primus, other influences on the nascent Incubus sound were the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Mr. Bungle and Faith No More. The band shifted between weighty guitar blowouts, reggae interludes, jazz-wise bridges, and deep funk bottom end. Songs like You Will Be a Hot Dancer, Shaft, Take Me to Your Leader, Trouble in 421, Medium, Speak Free and Sink Beneath the Line, and Psychopsilocybin were crunching, metallic, invigorating workouts, which suggested a band on the cusp of something special and rare. You Will Be a Hot Dancer begins with a slithery, lithe dose of Faith No More, Red Hot Chili Peppers influenced slap bass funk before lunging into a blaze of mad, frenetic guitars and scratching. Brandon screams lyrics like I'm gonna be a hot dancer and let's get this Marmaduke naked, as if he is a man talking in tongues. Take Me to Your Leader contains even weirder lyrics, sounding like Les Claypool on Magic Mushrooms. It opens with tribal, sparse drums and veers through exquisite bass runs, chunks of guitar, scratching and deranged lyrics like, what if I was just dreaming, what if I lived in a pear? At this stage of their development, the group were shifting into another gear and beginning to harness an individual creative vision, one which would prove to be potent and fruitful beyond their dreams.
Yeah, 311. They actually took us on our first major tour of the United States.
Us, 311, and Sugar Ray.
Incubus continued pursuing their muse and learnt the virtue of patience as news of their distinctive sound and youthful promise started to spread. Interscope offered a deal, and REM and Nirvana producer Scott Litt offered to sign them to his burgeoning Outpost label. However, eventually Incubus wrapped up a contract with immortal epic Korn's label. The group unleashed the Enjoy Incubus EP in early 1997, which consisted of songs from Fungus Among Us plus Version and As We Think We Is. The former is a slick, rumbling monster with mellow bass and slams of tuned-down guitars, with Brandon expounding anti-capitalist and anarchist slogans over the top. The latter is a delicious, exquisite slice of downtown funk, clearly influenced by the 70s work of pioneers such as Sly and the Family Stone, Bobby Byrd and George Clinton's Parliament and Funkadelic. This package gained wider distribution than Fungus Among Us and prepared the world for the full-length Science album a year later. In the meantime, the turntablist extraordinaire Chris Kilmore had joined the team as a full member, replacing the original DJ Life. Originally hailing from Pennsylvania, Kilmore had been struggling to make ends meet in forbidding LA when the chance to join Incubus arose. He was living in digs without electricity at the time, resorting to candles at night. Out of the blue, he received a call for an audition for a hard-rocking band who wanted the deft turntable skills of a creative, experienced DJ to add extra spice to an already cavernous sound. He was so excited and enthused that he learnt 16 songs in 2 days. The Science long player was another superb effort, building upon their core sound but embellishing to create a dizzying schizo-funk jazz metal hybrid. Tracks like Magic Medicine, Favorite Things, Nebula, Idiot Box and Summer Romance Anti-Gravity Love Song redefine the metal band format, gluing themselves to the frontal lobes immediately. The combined delivery of metronome-defying rhythms, operatic metal bluster, quirky pop, infectious melody and tripped-out funk made for a sonic cathedral of pure sound. Here was a band clearly in love with the idea of making music for the hell of it, wrapping up a variety of flavors in big riffs, loud choruses, and tunes so contagious you could probably catch them from somebody's head in a lift. The album as a whole is a preposterously weird and wonderful combination of wacky time signatures, progressive rock concepts, pure metallic power, poetic songwriterly sensibilities, and vintage uncut funk, recalling a multi-pronged medley of the best of Primus, Alice in Chains, Faith No More, Jane's Addiction, Parliament, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The band hit the road in support of Science for 2 years non-stop, opening for groups like Sugar Ray, Limp Bizkit, Ozzy Osbourne, Korn, Black Sabbath, 311 and others. They won a slot on the second stage of 1998's Ozfest, thanks to Ozzy's son Jack being a big fan of the band, and were invited to perform on Korn's Family Values tour in the same year. Meanwhile, Incubus turned up on the soundtrack album for Spawn, contributing a bizarre collaboration with DJ Greyboy, Familiar, and on the Scream 3 soundtrack, for which they recorded Crowded Elevator. Both soundtracks featured rosters of the main hard hitters in contemporary heavy music, from Creed and Stained to System of a Down and Marilyn Manson. After their lengthy touring schedule, Incubus returned to base and took 8 weeks to write the new, eagerly anticipated album, a record which was destined to shake up the metal fraternity and set the band on the way to interstellar success.
We just started messing around with the songs from Make Yourself at their most basic stripped-down level, acoustic guitar, vocal. We've been messing around with some of the songs from our previous records, too. Just in the back of the bus when we were killing time, and they started making us laugh, so we decided to try and put them down on tape.
Incubus's big breakthrough album, Make Yourself, was recorded every day for 9 weeks in the summer of 1999, and was unveiled for public consumption on the 26th of October of that year. Co-produced with Scott Litt, and mixing duties handled by Litt and Rick Will, the 13-track opus was another valiant attempt to break away from the hard rock world. Practicing the rapid intra-song mood shifts that were Nirvana's trademark, the songs changed in midstream, switching from full-on hard rock to almost jangly minor-key alternative rock, P-funk, jazz prog and reggae-infused experimentation. The album, though, was conceived in less than idyllic circumstances. During the recording, tensions within the group became so heated and fraught that they were whisked off to group therapy to sort out their issues and problems. Their differences were ironed out, but the band were aware that an element of disharmony was conducive to producing edgy, interesting music. This album trimmed any eclectic fat from the Incubus sound and transformed the band into a lean, though still diverse, rock machine. Whereas at times Science tended to the extremes, trying to outriff the heaviest of bands, outfunk the funkiest, and outwit the wittiest, Make Yourself reigned in these excessive tendencies. Songs such as George Clinton-esque Battlestar Screlachtica and the teeth gnashing When It Comes still took Incubus to the margins, but in the main Make Yourself streamlined the band's sound and utilised economy and taste. The brilliant songs on Make Yourself are effortlessly melodic, chorus-driven numbers showcasing Brandon's powerful, intelligent voice while simultaneously drawing the listener in with the multicoloured textures of sound and harmony. The record opens with the strident, hard, aggressive Privilege and soon shifts mood with tracks like the heavy, enchanting Nowhere Fast, the earnest anthem I Miss You, the bubbling, reggae-tinged title track, and the classic, soft, hard dynamic of Pardon Me. Elsewhere, the bittersweet acoustic harmonies of Drive, dubby ballad The Warmth, and the incendiary Out From Under display a band at the peak of its powers and unafraid to take risks with styles. The Stellar single is a wide-eyed homage to Brandon's girlfriend's celestial body. Meet me in outer space. I need you to see this place. It might be the only way that I can show you how it feels to be inside you. This lovely piece positioned Brandon in a completely different headspace to that of most heavy metal dudes, with their emphasis on groupie sex and instant gratification. First single Pardon Me was written about a particularly dark period in Brandon's life when he was suffering emotional distress. By chance, he came across a photo of a guy who had supposedly spontaneously combusted, and he couldn't help laughing at it. This helped Brandon see the humour in his own personal situation, as well as identify with the pile of ashes in the photograph. Critical acclaim clung to Incubus and wouldn't let go. Reviewers praised Make Yourself's restless invention, spontaneity, silly humour, razor-sharp intelligence, emotional candour, and greedy eclecticism. The optimism and radio-friendly catchiness proved to be a winner, with pundits grown weary of legions of angst-by-numbers nihilists and apathetic losers. Initial sales of the album were slow, but the Pardon Me, Stellar and Drive singles eventually helped it shift in excess of 2 million units. The album was still selling well a year after release, peaking at 47 on the Billboard 200 chart in September 2000. Drive topped the Modern Rock Tracks chart and peaked at number 8 on the Mainstream Rock Tracks chart. Pardon Me hit number 3 on the Modern Rock Tracks chart and number 7 on the Mainstream Rock Tracks chart, while Stellar scaled the heights of 2 and 17 respectively. However, the album's first single Pardon Me stalled at first. Fortuitously though, the band's product manager Jock Elliott got wind of Mike casually playing the song on his $50 acoustic guitar on the tour bus. It sounded so good that he insisted Incubus hurriedly record an acoustic version for release and send copies out to radio stations. From there on, the song came to life and became a smash hit.
We're gonna try and do a Japan-Australia run, hopefully next year sometime.
We have a friend from Japan. Her name's Hiromi. She's from Japan and she's come out to shows in Europe.
She
like
came to
shows
Europe,
in
like,
New
all
York.
over.
She always brings us cute little like presents and stuff.
Now officially established as big hitters in heavy rock's Super League, Incubus broke out of the metal ghetto and crossed over to top 40 mainstream radio and VH1. While planning their next move, and no doubt to sate fans between proper releases, Incubus issued a limited edition EP of rarities, When Incubus Attacks Volume 1, and also re-released Fungus Among Us. The former was a 6-song affair, offering odds and ends not found on any of the previous releases, including 2 alternative versions of Pardon Me. The awesome compilation consisted of Crowded Elevator, the song recorded for the Scream 3 soundtrack, live recordings of Favourite Things and Pardon Me, and beautiful acoustic versions of Pardon Me, Make Yourself and Stellar. Much of Incubus's appeal lies in the production quality of their records, so it was heartening to hear these songs in a new light, stripped down, unadorned, bare and intimate, without zippy electronic flourishes or gut-wrenching riffs. Taken as a package, When Incubus Attacks Volume 1 the first in a planned series of rarity releases, served to illuminate the more traditional songwriterly aspect of the band, whilst reminding listeners of their raw power when burning on all cylinders in the live format. It represented the two polar opposites of Incubus's method, which, taken together, define what they're all about. Also featured on the record were the likes of trumpeter Alex Norris, drummer Joe Strasser, pianist George Colligan, bassman Dwayne Burno, tenor saxist Greg Tardy, and singer Claudia Cunha, all helping to flesh out the live cuts. The When Incubus Attacks Volume 1 collection debuted at number 47 on Billboard's Top 200 chart, despite being released only in a limited quantity of 100,000 copies. Fans anxiously monitoring the group's plans were quick to snatch up copies of the infinitely collectible item. In the meantime, Incubus hit the UK for a tour in April 2000, returning to the US for a tour with 311 in May, and then joining up with the Ozfest tour. They retreated to writing songs and finding time for themselves. Incubus re-emerged for the first ever ESPN Action Sports and Music Awards held at the Universal Amphitheatre in LA on April 7th, 2001, which also featured Black Sabbath, Ben Harper and Busta Rhymes. They also turned in a weighty performance alongside the likes of Third Eye Blind and John Mellencamp at Tiger Woods' annual charity benefit Tiger Jam 4 at Las Vegas's Mandalay Bay Event Center on April the 28th. In the summer of 2001, the group were recruited to perform with the likes of DJ Paul Oakenfold, Outkast, New Order, Nelly Furtado, The Orb and The Roots on the Area 1 Festival Tour organised by the diminutive genius Moby. This slot provided the perfect platform for unveiling new numbers in their set, such as Nice to Know You and the ballad Warning. They began their stint on July the 11th in Atlanta and finished on July 28th at Mile High Stadium in Denver. In addition, they played the Rolling Rock Town Fair on August the 4th in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, alongside the likes of Stone Temple Pilots, Stained, Deftones, Oleander and Live. Never a band to rest on their laurels, Incubus announced the opening dates of a headlining tour with Hoobastank, The Start and One Side Zero to promote their forthcoming album. They kicked off at New York City's Hammerstein Ballroom on September the 15th, following their tour with some dates with the Deftones in October. All proceeds from the band's two sold-out nights at the Hammerstein Ballroom went to the Red Cross relief effort for victims of the World Trade Center disaster, with a local station doubling the total. Incubus also had collection cups and stands for fans to lend their support to the worthy cause. The group observed a moment of silence during the shows, which also gave rise to chants of USA, USA, USA at several points. Bizarrely, Brandon playfully broke into verses of Madonna's Like a Virgin during the song Vitamin. Then they took their sound to the heart of North America, culminating in a 1st and 2nd December two-night stand in Universal City, California.
You know, the day before, you know, we strike Baghdad, which a lot of people find to be, you know, quite coincidental.
Yeah,
you know?
Especially after the whole movie came out, even indulging the scenario as a possible. They're asking that question, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I don't know. Just the international situation is desperate as usual.
Incubus finished recording their follow-up to Make Yourself in June 2001, having locked themselves away for a couple of months in a stately oceanside Malibu Hills mansion with producer Scott Litt. All 5 members of Incubus were living at the residence for that amount of time. For the first time, Litt was involved with the guys from day one of the writing process, rather than just joining in during the recording sessions, and mixed the album whilst the band were on tour in Europe. The group chose the mansion for recording just to see how the creative process would be affected by a change in atmosphere. They all agreed that it made for a more enjoyable working environment, which was shown in the resulting music. The guys got to look out on the ocean every day instead of being locked in the padded walls of a recording studio. early reports from the Incubus camp suggested that the new record contained a sprawling, melting pot of ideas from all over the spectrum, though rumours of comparisons with Engelbert Humperdinck, Johnny Mathis, Julio Iglesias, Enrique and Britney Spears were taken with a pinch of salt. Incubus set about tantalising their fans by releasing one album track at 11 a.m. every Monday morning on their website enjoyincubus.com for the weeks leading up to the album's release. Every other weekday featured its own content, such as new instant messaging icons for fans on Tuesdays, studio footage on Wednesdays, album souvenirs on Thursdays, and behind-the-scenes footage from Malibu on Fridays. Named Morning View after the street where the album had been recorded, the album was unleashed for public consumption on the 22nd of October 2001. The release was celebrated in fine style by Incubus giving a 90-minute live performance and interview radio special from New York's Sony studio by Westwood One. Along with brand new material from the album, the group performed hits from Make Yourself. Morning View was hailed as an instant classic, an oceanic, multi-dimensional song cycle inspired by the ravages of heartbreak and loss. Both sophisticated and deeply emotive, it ebbed and flowed like Brian Wilson's Pet Sounds, darting from severe rock to narcoleptic atmospherics and back to some of the most moving ballads you're ever likely to hear this side of a spiritualized or a Frank Sinatra album. The house in which the album was recorded became their little paradise, a place which represented escape and fantasy and sprinkled these elements on the record. It was a place where the group could surf, swim and sunbathe in luxury whilst occasionally getting together to record a song. Such working environments traditionally tend to breed self-indulgent, pompous, bloated works of art, but in this case, such a relaxed, stress-free atmosphere produced some of Incubus's strongest material to date. Many of Brandon's lyrics were near the knuckle, painful dissections of failed relationships and betrayals, delivered with the precision of a master craftsman. The new writing and recording setup had enabled him to gain a fresh, objective perspective on life, and events in his past, in particular, for instance, Circles, had been started 2 years previously, but only came to fruition on Morning View. Musically, Incubus experimented with loose song structure and odd off-the-wall arrangements, whilst slapping on layer after layer of melodic hooks and zippy electric guitar workouts. Some parts of the album raised the Incubus heaviosity quotient past 11, whilst other fragments contain some of the most mellifluous, beautiful music they'd ever committed to tape. Nice to Know You opens proceedings with a swagger and a thrust that continues throughout the angular fury of Blood on the Ground, and the similarly whip-cracking Circles, Have You Ever and Under My Umbrella. Nice to Know You, with its subtle melding of drum and bass verse into the rock chorus, was written at the band's final show of their last European tour, which was sadly cut short due to Brandon's strep throat. Having taken a sleeping pill and fallen asleep on his hand, he woke up to find it bent and nerveless for 3 weeks. When it eventually woke up, he praised God and got inspired to write a tune around the experience. Blood on the Ground is a fearsome, fiery as hell rocker in true metal tradition, containing some lethal power riffing. Lyrically, it concerned Brandon learning to bite his tongue and keep controversial statements inside his head rather than letting them out. This tale of restraint is summed up perfectly by the pithy line, "Blood in my mouth beats blood on the ground." The music takes a left turn with cuts such as the shuffling Are You In?, the magical first single Wish You Were Here, the pensive 11 a.m., the teasing Echo, the stately Just a Phase, and the truly monumental Aqueous Transmission. The latter was written on a Chinese instrument similar to a guitar that Mike borrowed from master axeman Steve Vai. Vai lent it to him on the condition that he write something beautiful with it, and Mike duly obliged. Aqueous Transmission is an outstanding, visionary piece of music, utilizing a bamboo flute and soaring orchestrations. The Eastern-influenced track is built from a simple acoustic guitar riff and develops into a sparse, melancholy, snake-like breakbeat piece influenced by the works of Massive Attack and their string arranger Craig Armstrong. Simultaneously evoking an old Disney score, The Jungle Book perhaps, and some pop music from the future, it pushed the band to a whole new level of artistry. critics applauded the band's awe-inspiring confidence and willingness to take the initiative. The Morning View album confirmed that here was a group of musicians ready to leave the metal scene in its wake and explore a whole new palette of sonic possibilities. Meanwhile, contrary to media reports, the video clip for the lead single Wish You Were Here was not banned by MTV and had been put on heavy rotation by the channel. Apparently, Incubus presented MTV with two versions, one of which emulated an old Monkees episode in which they were chased by girls off a bridge. In the light of the World Trade Center tragedy, MTV objected to the clip's climax, where the band acted as floating and sinking cadavers after hitting the sea below the bridge. The alternative clip, with the bridge scenes replaced by more live performance footage and shots of the album recording sessions in Malibu, was accepted by MTV.
There was a distinct period in my life where me and my friends would sit in each other's garages and work on our skateboards and listen to Black Sabbath. Really funny.
Much has been made of Incubus's diverse, intelligent, unusually melodic brand of metal noise. The fact that, unlike most metalers, their inspirations and influences come from a wide range of sources. They've always attested to the fact that they don't feel the need to be the hardest band. Liberating themselves from being the heaviest or noisiest has meant that all manner of other avenues have opened up for them. In appreciating many styles and genres of music, Incubus have questioned the very essence of being in a metal band. Many metalers cotton on to the sound in their teens and never open their ears to anything else as they grow and mature as musicians and human beings. But Incubus were open-minded, Catholic in their tastes, and always alert to new developments from the word go. When they formed Incubus in 1991, the alternative nation ignited by the likes of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction and Nirvana was still in its infancy, feeling its way around its new environment. The gap between alternative or underground music and the mainstream wasn't truly bludgeoned until Smells Like Teen Spirit kicked open the barriers. The fresh funk metal sound, typified by Perry Farrell's band The Peppers and Faith No More, was the one which had drawn the members of Incubus together. Up till then, each individual member of Incubus had learned their craft by studying the metal masters of yesteryear such as Black Sabbath, Stooges, Ozzy, Slayer and Metallica. Yet the raw potency of black music had always appealed to Brandon and the guys, and they were keen to inject the funk into their bewildering sonic stew. Songs like Been Caught Stealing by Jane's Addiction and Under the Bridge by the Peppers gave Incubus a blueprint to follow, but George Clinton and Sly Stone's mercurial influence was forever hovering over their project. Recruiting the magisterial turntable techniques of Chris Kilmore proved to be the final piece in the Incubus jigsaw, for the DJ brought the impeccable knowledge of black styles, such as hip-hop and funk, that seemed so lacking from other metal acts. Ironically, for decades, metal had bleached the rock and roll sound from its multifarious Afro-American roots and produced a pallid, one-dimensional product. Here was a band proud to be called a metal act, but now injecting the sizzle of black music into their chosen genre and in the process reconnecting rock with its origins. Moreover, as Incubus have stretched out and evolved, their own influences have changed and their music has accommodated new and wonderful elements. This has been done in an organic way without jumping on bandwagons or pandering to fashion. There is no buying into the fads for this most spiritual of bands, even when trends might happen to be exciting or are greedily incorporated by higher profile stars. For example, the beautiful piece Aqueous Transmission, which closes Morning View, sounds unlike anything they or any other metal act have recorded. The eerie, haunting atmospherics, Eastern influences and poignant orchestrations clearly belong more on a film soundtrack score or perhaps a down-tempo ambient chill-out set, but Mike Einziger ignored convention and made it because it sounded fresh and inventive. Such innovations suggest a brighter future for both Incubus and metal. The band's decision to go with an acoustic version of Pardon Me showed a band willing to evade formulas and use whatever tools feel right for each track. Brandon feels a particularly close affinity with female artists, in particular the voices of Annie DiFranco, Bjork and PJ Harvey. He feels that the female voice is far more suited to melody than the male voice, that it has a greater power to caress and pierce the emotions. In comparison, he says, male voices sound like apes with microphones. Far too rare is that a vocalist and guitarist are so brilliantly paired, but whenever it occurs, it's always one of those lucky rock and roll miracles. In Brandon Boyd and Mike Einziger, Incubus have a classic sonic marriage, with a vocalist whose anguished passion matches the deeply gifted six-stringer's versatile and protean talent perfectly. Both clearly understand the dynamics of the best rock and roll, and Einziger brings to the group a singular talent worthy of the overused term genius. Equally adept at barnstorming riffage, acoustic picking, or hallucinatory soundscaping, his technique is the sum of many influences, ranging from Dave Gilmour to Jerry Cantrell. Whilst Brandon, Mike and Jose listened to pile-driving guitar bands as they were growing up, and to an extent never lost the bug, conversely Chris and Dirk are more interested in the exciting developments in electronica and dance culture, particularly the drum and bass sounds of British musicians. Chris's DJing work is more about adding an extra layer and texture to the band's sound, not an authentic blast of hip-hop flavour, as the band are famously dismissive of the whole rap metal crossover scene. Incubus, then, clearly exhibit not only a consummate professionalism and exhaustive knowledge of their genre, but also a mastery of other forms and a deep respect for fusion and experimentation. Their diverse musical interests and tastes have meshed to create a body of work that transcends mere metal or rock.
I was like 15 and my mom came in and gave me this book about like human sexuality. Very graphic illustrations, and she was like, you know, if you ever have any questions or anything, it's okay to ask. And so we used it for all our flyers. And there were some pretty, we got calls from
Complaints and stuff.
complaints from parents and clubs that we played in.
Incubus are famous for having rejected the testosterone-laden noise-mongering of their peers and rivals, for being genuinely nice, amicable, laid-back guys. Skeptics claim that there must be some dark secret hidden from public view, but they just get on with making music and leave the controversy and shock tactics to those bands who need it in order to deflect from their musical inadequacies. They are some of the most well-adjusted guys in popular music, which is reflected in their sound. They eschew the turbocharged angst rock of their genre for something infinitely more considered, layered and sophisticated. This has meant that their records have been seamlessly incorporated into a plethora of radio formats, whether lightening up heavy rock playlists or adding beef to mainstream fare. Despite his parents' remarriages, Brandon has remained a naturally upbeat, happy, contented person and didn't go through any cataclysmic teenage torments, the usual background for a budding metal artist. In fact, he thrives on having an extended family and gets on well with his stepbrothers. Brandon's obvious love for his mother hasn't done his heartthrob status any harm. In fact, it's made him appear more accessible and real, in contrast to those cartoon metalers who you could never imagine discussing philosophy and theology with anyone, least of all their nearest and dearest. He refers to his mother as a genuine creative spirit and credits her with turning him on to the artistic world in the first place. He might have dated Joe English, the girl in the Stella video, for 3 years, but it's Dolly who remains the most influential female in his life. Despite the mega fame, Brandon still claims to be uneasy about all the female attention he attracts. He says that he turns into a tongue-tied adolescent around beautiful women, either saying something goofy and ridiculous or embarrassing himself by drying up. Apparently, recently, he saw a stunning woman on a beach in Barcelona and took 45 minutes to sum up the nerve to approach her. Brandon's artistic and spiritual interests, He practices yoga, still draws and reads widely. Mark him out from the other rock frontmen, so it's hardly surprising that he feels more in tune with his feminine side. Yet this doesn't equate with his avowed fear of talking to potential girlfriends. Although the band members are famously positive and upbeat personalities, it's Dirk who keeps them down to earth and rooted in reality. The self-appointed straight guy of the group, his sourpuss tendencies keep the rest of the band grounded and in check. Still, even he has to concede that Incubus are in an enviable position right now. However, there have been times when the harmony of the band has been fractured. For instance, Brandon and Dirk used to fight almost every day on the road. By his own admission, not a morning person, Dirk was driven mad by Brandon's unaffected breeziness and early morning chirpiness. Incubus all agree that contemporary rock music is in crisis. They despair at MTV's refusal to play anything that doesn't reveal everything about the band within 2 choruses, whilst Dirk and Chris have turned their back on that world completely. For them, the left-field strains of alternative music offer more exciting possibilities. Incubus point the finger at Korn for creating the current rock music climate, whereby every other band on the radio and MTV is another horrible, diluted, hybrid replica of them, tuning down their guitars and copying their sound with negligible originality. This isn't so much a personal attack on old tourmates and friends as a lament for the disintegration of the ideals that inspired Incubus to form. Incubus, possibly the most upbeat and relentlessly life-affirming group in metal, are instinctively cynical about the predominance of angry rock, feeling that angst is very much overplayed at the moment. They insist that it's so much more difficult to write a song about being happy than being in the doldrums. Banging on about being fucked up or losing a girlfriend is relatively easy, even if it might not make for the most interesting music. On the other hand, uplifting sentiments are notoriously hard to nail down in a song, particularly if you want to avoid being cast as a hopeless idealist, a tree-hugging hippie, or a simpleton. Incubus are well aware of the double-edged nature of fame and success. They have the freedom to explore their creative impulses, but at the same time have very little time for themselves. Record company commitments, touring, and publicity engagements all take their toll, and the more ardent fans can sometimes cross the line. People who don't know them will make judgments about them in a personal way, and the media scrutinizes even the most menial aspects of the band. They are particularly dismissive of parasitic people in the law and in journalism who try to take advantage of the creativity and fame of Incubus, the business side of music which drains much needed energy, and those who've conveniently labelled the band as nice, regular guys. Above all, they lament the media's inability to cope with the concept of a 3-dimensional rock band who make music for the love of it and not because of some childhood trauma. Each member of the band retains a strong link with their families. For these guys, rebellion is not about losing your head, pissing off your parents and indulging all whims. It's about coming to terms with the realities of the world as you grow up and ensuring that you don't compromise your values. Through a decade of ups and downs, they've stayed close to each other through mutual respect and a very primal creative force which knows no bounds.
We used to pass out flyers at high schools by ourselves. I remember kids like looking at the flyer and like, what kind of band is it? You know?
1999's landmark album, Make Yourself, was the catalyst in Incubus's metamorphosis from metal noisenicks into something ethereal, eclectic and progressive, just left of centre but truly ambitious and panoramic. Incubus emerged from the pack with music that wasn't just obtuse but beautifully strange and unique. It was a universally lauded evolution whose example was regrettably ignored by their peers. A couple of years on, they've consolidated their position in the rock community, and the march continues onwards and upwards. Mercifully, Brandon, Mike, Jose, Dirk and Chris haven't buckled under the weight of expectation, instead expanding that album's sonic vision and widening its windswept horizons. The Morning View album contains unexpected delights at every turn, not least in the realization that Incubus may only just be hitting their collective stride. Although Incubus sprang from the same scene that spawned nu metal's Golden Boys, and they haven't shirked from using the same channels, strategic slots supporting the Deftones and Korn, performing on high-profile package tours like Ozfest and Family Values, that guarantee commercial acceptance, they've achieved it all without once compromising their ideals. They might have had a less spectacular ascent than most of the current leading lights in metal, but the chances are that they'll last longer. Beyond impressive, beyond essential, Incubus have long since transcended the limitations of their roots and delivered more than the sum of their influences, simply becoming the quintessential hard rock act of our time. It is more than apparent that the group are musicians of the highest caliber, capable of bombarding the listener with one jaw-dropping musical twist after another. Their timeless melodies, gargantuan riffs, rhythmic invention, structural genius, and wide-eyed experimentation makes them so far detached from the commercialism of pop punk and nu metal that it's embarrassing. Confounding expectations at every turn, Incubus occupy that subconscious space in your head where the inexplicable thrives. With better songs than Tool and enough invention to make the likes of Slipknot sound as limp as a slug with brewer's droop, Incubus are operating on a completely different plateau to their contemporaries. As such, they deserve to be bracketed with the best of the non-metal alternative nation and the classic artists of rock's heritage. They spin around the usual axis of discordant guitar apoplexy, dynamic precision and yearning melody, but there's a genuine sense of craftsmanship within the music. Often barrages are punctuated by passages of chilled-out bliss, creating a far greater impact in the process. The overall effect is like a bleak monument to metallic complexity and mechanical precision, but delivered with wit, harmonic beauty and doe-eyed sophistication. Incubus are a devastating rock-like fuck bomb. Those trading under the dubious catch-all term metal will forever be lazily marginalized as nothing more than a silly sideshow, perpetually recycling the same tired, unreconstructed cliches and banality. But the truth is that Incubus have always been visionary musical alchemists, willfully intent on cohering formerly mutually exclusive styles into purest sonic gold. They're driven by the desire to be different from the rest and believe that creativity is not a means to an end, but an end in itself. Everything that Incubus has achieved has been done with originality, conviction and style. Making it has been on their own terms, a refreshing and admirable strategy for a high-profile US rock act. In a world where scruffy kids get airplay and acclaim for screaming over loud guitars and dissing their parents, Incubus stand alone as considered, intelligent, perceptive and creative artists. All the venues for their headline US tour have been handpicked by the band, with extra dates added as opposed to venue upgrades. They've also brought along their friends Hoobastank for the ride, when they could very well have accepted any label buy-on support. They promised genuine invention, humanity, intensity, complexity and the antithesis of dumbed-down rock and roll, and on each album they've more than delivered. It'll be intriguing to see where they go from here, as they seem certain to keep on evolving and taking left turns. It's not in their nature to follow the script. The world needs a dose of Incubus.
Thanks for buying Maximum Incubus. We hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for further titles on Chrome Dreams coming up soon. If you did enjoy or have any comments or suggestions, write to us at Chrome Dreams, PO Box 230, New Malden, Surrey, UK, KT36YY, or email on mail@chromedreams.co.uk. Details of our full catalogue are listed on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye for now.